I never imagined that at 62 years old, after building a successful career and raising a family, I would be locked in a restaurant bathroom, accused of being a thief. But that's exactly what happened to me at Rose Bistro, one of the most exclusive establishments in downtown Chicago. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just another customer. I was the potential investor who could make or break their future, and their prejudice was about to cost them everything. But before we get into the story, please support us by liking and subscribing right now. I also want to say hi. Leave your name, city, and the word present in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from, even in faraway places. The day started like any other Tuesday. I woke up in my modest apartment in Oak Park, put on my usual comfortable clothes, a simple cotton blouse and worn jeans, and headed to meet my business partner, Patricia Monroe, at her upscale restaurant. Patricia and I had been discussing a partnership for months. She wanted to expand her restaurant chain, and I had the capital and experience from successfully turning around 5 struggling restaurants in the Midwest. What Patricia didn't know was that I wanted to test something first. I wanted to see how her staff treated people when they didn't look like they belonged. You see, I've learned over the years that the true character of a business isn't shown in how they treat their best-dressed customers. It's revealed in how they treat those they think don't matter. So I arrived early, dressed down, looking like someone who had just wandered in from the street. My gray hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no jewelry, no designer bag, nothing that screamed money. I wanted to experience Rose Bistro the way an ordinary person would. The moment I walked through those glass doors, I felt it, the immediate judgment. The hostess, Andre, looked me up and down with barely concealed disgust. His smile, so warm for the well-dressed couple who had entered just before me, vanished completely. "Good afternoon," I said politely. "I'd like a table, please." He didn't even check his reservation book. "I'm sorry, but this table is reserved." I glanced around the nearly empty dining room. "I understand. Are there any other tables available?" "Unfortunately, everything is occupied or reserved," he said, his tone clipped and cold. There was no apology in his voice, no attempt to accommodate me. Just dismissal. I could have left right then. Part of me wanted to, but I needed to see how deep this went. "I see. May I wait inside for a table to open up?" Andre's jaw tightened. "You can wait outside if you'd like. There are tables on the patio." It was February, in Chicago. The patio was closed for winter. "I'd prefer to wait inside, please. I'll stand in a corner where I won't bother anyone." He exchanged a glance with the waitress, Tessa, who was watching our interaction with interest. Finally, he gestured toward a dark corner near the kitchen. "Fine, you can wait there." I stood in that corner for 20 minutes, watching Andre and Tessa fawn over every other customer who walked in. They offered aperitifs, smiled warmly, spoke in that practiced tone of gracious hospitality. For me, there was nothing but cold indifference. When another customer asked to make a reservation, I watched Tessa carefully write down their information. That's when I got an idea. I approached the hostess stand. "Excuse me, I'd like to make a reservation for later today. 4 o'clock, please." Tessa looked surprised but recovered quickly. "Of course. What name?" "Eleanor," I said. "Eleanor Williams." She didn't write anything down, just smiled that false smile and said, "All set. Your reservation is confirmed." I thanked her and left, knowing exactly what would happen when I returned. At 4 o'clock, I walked back into Rose Bistro. Andre was at the hostess stand, and his expression when he saw me was almost comical. "Can I help you?" "I have a reservation for 4 o'clock, under Eleanor Williams." He made a show of checking the book, running his finger down the page. "I don't see any reservation under that name." "That's impossible. Your colleague took my information just a few hours ago." "Well, there's nothing here. And even if there were, you needed to pay a deposit to hold the reservation." My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice calm. The young lady told me no deposit was necessary. She said I just needed to arrive at the agreed time. "She was mistaken," Andre said flatly. All reservations require a 50% deposit. I could see Tessa watching from across the room, pretending to arrange menus. Could you please call her over? I'd like to clarify this confusion. Andre called Tessa to the stand. When she arrived, I explained what had happened. She looked right at me with those cold eyes and said, "I'm sorry, but I've never seen you before. I serve dozens of customers every day. You must be confusing me with someone else." The lie was so blatant, so cruel, that for a moment I couldn't speak. Friends, every story I tell you is released every day, but YouTube will only show them to you if you tap the red subscribe button. Please do it now while I'm speaking. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a story. Have you done it yet? Thank you. Standing there at that hostess stand, being called a liar by someone young enough to be my granddaughter, something shifted inside me. I've faced discrimination before, as a woman in business, as someone who started with nothing. But this felt different. This was personal. This was about them deciding I didn't deserve basic human dignity because of how I looked. "I see," I said quietly. "Well, I suppose there's been a misunderstanding." Andre smirked. "If you'd like, there's a fast food place 2 blocks down. If you're hungry, you might prefer that." The condescension in his voice was thick enough to cut. He wasn't just dismissing me, he was mocking me. Suggesting I belonged at McDonald's, not in his precious upscale restaurant. I could have walked away. Part of me wanted to. But then I thought about Patricia, about the partnership we were discussing, about what this behavior said about her establishment. I needed to see this through. "Actually," I said, pulling out my wallet, "I'd be happy to pay double the reservation fee if you can accommodate me right now. I'm meeting someone important, and I really need a table." Andre's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, you don't seem to understand. It's not about money. All our tables are genuinely occupied or reserved. There's nothing I can do." But I could see past him into the dining room. At least 4 tables sat empty, napkins folded, ready for service. "Those tables appear to be available," I pointed out. "Those are for reservations, customers who followed our protocols and paid their deposits." The message was clear. You're not our kind of customer. You don't belong here. I decided to wait. I found a small bench near the entrance and sat down, watching the elegant dance of service unfold around me. Wealthy customers arrived and were greeted like royalty. Menus were presented with flourish. Wine was suggested, poured, savored. The whole performance was designed to make people feel special, important, valued, unless you looked like me. After an hour, Andre approached me. "Ma'am, we have a table available now. A reservation was canceled." I followed him to a small table in the back, near the kitchen entrance. Not the prime seating, but I didn't care. I was finally being served. Or so I thought. Tessa came by with a menu, but no welcoming preamble, no offer of an aperitif, nothing. Just dropped the menu on the table and asked if I was ready to order. I ordered the house special and their most expensive bottle of wine. Her eyes widened slightly when I did, but she wrote it down without comment. While I waited for my food, I called Patricia. "Hi, I'm at the restaurant and ordered what you recommended." "Wonderful," she said. "I'm running about 20 minutes late, but I'll be there soon. Why don't you order something for me too? I'll have the bolognese pasta." "Will do. See you soon." After I hung up, I called Tessa over and added the pasta to my order. Her expression became even more suspicious. Why would someone dressed like me order so much expensive food? I watched her walk back to the kitchen and whisper to Andre. They both looked at me, and I could read their thoughts as clearly as if they'd spoken them aloud. She can't afford this. She's going to try to leave without paying. The food arrived, beautifully plated, aromatic, clearly the work of a talented chef. I took a few bites of the house special, savoring the complex flavors. The wine was excellent too, a 1991 vintage that probably cost more than some people's weekly groceries. I ate slowly, watching the staff watch me. Their anxiety was palpable. Andre kept glancing over, and Tessa found reasons to pass by my table repeatedly. Then I made my move. I stood up and walked toward the restrooms. Immediately, I heard rapid footsteps behind me. "Ma'am! Ma'am! Where are you going?" I turned to see Andre rushing toward me, panic in his eyes. "To the restroom." "Is that a problem?" "Oh, no, of course not. I just wanted to make sure you knew where it was." I continued to the ladies' room, shaking my head. They actually thought I was making a run for it. I was in the bathroom for maybe 3 minutes. But when I tried to open the door to leave, it wouldn't budge. The handle turned, but the door was stuck or being held from the outside. "Hello? The door seems to be jammed. Can someone help?" Andre's voice came from the other side, artificially concerned. "Oh dear, it seems the door handle has malfunctioned. We'll need to get maintenance to fix it. Please be patient." I tried the handle again. It wasn't broken. Someone was holding it shut. "Excuse me, but I need to leave right now. My friend is about to arrive and she'll be waiting for me." "I'm very sorry, ma'am, but you'll have to wait until we can repair it. Safety regulations, you understand." Safety regulations. Right. This wasn't about safety. This was about keeping me trapped until they figured out what to do about the bill they were convinced I couldn't pay. "I'm calling the police," I could hear Tessa's voice, shrill with righteousness. "There's a woman trying to leave without paying her $400 bill." $400. They'd called the police over $400 without even giving me a chance to pay. Locked in that bathroom, listening to them call me a thief, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Helplessness. Here I was, a successful businesswoman with more money than everyone in that restaurant combined, being treated like a criminal because I wore jeans instead of diamonds. I pounded on the door. "This is false imprisonment. You can't keep me locked in here." "Ma'am, please calm down," Andre called through the door. "The police are on their way." "We'll sort this all out very soon." "Calm down." They lock me in a bathroom and tell me to calm down. I heard new voices in the restaurant, deep, authoritative. The police had arrived quickly. Too quickly, probably because Andre had made it sound like an emergency. "Good afternoon, officer." Andre's voice was smooth now, professional. "Thank you for coming so quickly. We have a situation with a customer who attempted to leave without paying her bill." "How much does she owe?" the officer asked. $400. She ordered our most expensive items, the house special, premium wine, pasta. Then she tried to flee to the bathroom. "Well, that's something you can usually work out between yourselves. Maybe she can wash dishes or make a payment plan." I heard the frustration in Andre's voice. "Officer, you don't understand. This person has shown no intention of paying. We had to lock the bathroom door to prevent her from escaping entirely." There was a pause. Then the officer's voice, uncertain. "You locked her in?" "The door malfunctioned," Andre said quickly. "A coincidence, really. But yes, she's currently unable to exit." "You'd better let her out," the officer said, and I could hear the doubt creeping into his tone. "You can't legally detain someone like this." "I'm afraid she'll run," Andre protested. "I'll make sure she doesn't. Open the door." I heard fumbling at the handle, and suddenly it swung open. I stepped out, my face flushed with anger and humiliation, to find a young police officer looking uncomfortable and Andre looking self-righteous. "Ma'am," the officer began, "these folks say you were trying to leave without—" "I was using the restroom," I cut him off. "I've been here for nearly 2 hours. I ordered food, I'm waiting for someone to join me, and they decided I was a criminal because of how I'm dressed." "She ordered $400 worth of food and wine," Andre interjected. "Look at her. Does she look like she can afford that?" The officer looked at me, really looked at me, taking in my simple clothes, my age, my lack of expensive accessories. I could see him trying to reconcile what he saw with the amount of money in question. "Can you pay the bill?" he asked me directly. "Of course I can pay the bill," I said, pulling out my wallet. "But I shouldn't have to prove I can afford to eat in a restaurant just because I don't look wealthy enough for their standards." I counted out $500 bills and slapped them on the nearest table. "There, $500. Keep the change. Consider it payment for the worst dining experience of my life." Andre's face went pale as he stared at the money. Tessa, standing nearby, looked equally shocked. I apologize for the misunderstanding, Andre stammered. Misunderstanding, I repeated. You judged me from the moment I walked in. You gave me a fake reservation. You lied to my face. You seated me at the worst table, and then you locked me in a bathroom and called the police. That's not a misunderstanding. That's discrimination. The officer was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Well, since the bill is paid, I don't think there's anything else for me to do here. No, there isn't, I agreed. Thank you for your time, officer. He left quickly, clearly wanting no part of what was becoming an awkward situation. Andre was trying to salvage something from the disaster. Ma'am, please, let me offer you a complimentary dessert, or perhaps... I don't want anything from you except to never set foot in this establishment again, I said coldly. I understand your frustration, he said, his voice taking on that practiced smoothness again. But you must understand, we have standards here. We can't just let anyone... Anyone what? I interrupted. Anyone who doesn't look rich enough? Anyone who doesn't meet your superficial standards of what a wealthy customer should look like? Tessa stepped forward, and I could see her trying a different approach. Look, we're sorry, but you have to admit, ordering that much food when you're dressed like... Well, it did seem suspicious. So poverty is suspicious now? I asked. The assumption that someone can't afford a nice meal unless they're wearing designer clothes? We were just being cautious, Andre said defensively. We've had people try to scam us before. No, I said firmly. You were being prejudiced. There's a difference. I gathered my things, preparing to leave, when I heard a familiar voice from the entrance. Eleanor! There you are! Patricia Monroe swept into the restaurant, immaculate in a designer suit, her presence immediately commanding attention. Andre and Tessa's faces went from defensive to confused to horrified in the span of seconds. Patricia, I greeted her, watching the staff's reactions carefully. I'm afraid I won't be staying for our meeting. What? Why not? She looked around, taking in the tense atmosphere, the scattered $100 bills on the table, the barely concealed shock on her employees' faces. What happened here? If you want to know how this story ends and discover many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free, and it helps me a lot. I watched Patricia's face change as understanding dawned. She looked from me to Andre to Tessa, and I could see her putting the pieces together. Ms. Monroe, Andre started, his voice shaking slightly. There was an incident with this customer. This customer, Patricia repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. Andre, do you know who this is? He shook his head, looking genuinely confused. This is Eleanor Williams. Eleanor Williams, the restaurant consultant who has successfully turned around 5 failing establishments in the Midwest. Eleanor Williams, who I've been courting for months to become my business partner. Eleanor Williams, who was supposed to meet me here today to discuss investing in my restaurant chain. The color drained from Andre's face completely. Tessa looked like she might be sick. But I didn't know, Andre stammered. Exactly, I said quietly. You didn't know. You made assumptions based on nothing but appearances. Patricia turned to me, her expression mortified. Eleanor, please tell me what happened. I did. I told her everything, from the fake reservation to being locked in the bathroom to having the police called on me. With each detail, Patricia's face grew more troubled. When I finished, there was silence in the restaurant. The few remaining customers were watching with undisguised interest. I am so deeply sorry, Patricia said, and I could hear genuine anguish in her voice. Please, let me make this right. Can we sit down and talk about what happened? I don't think there's anything to talk about, I replied. Your staff has shown me exactly what kind of values this establishment operates on. No, please, she insisted. Give me a chance to address this. What my employees did was inexcusable, but please don't judge the entire restaurant by their actions. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to leave and never look back. But I could see the desperation in Patricia's eyes, and I remembered the months of conversations we'd had about her vision for the restaurant, her dreams of expansion, her genuine passion for hospitality. "All right," I said finally. "I'll stay, but only because I want to see how you handle this." Patricia nodded and turned to Andre and Tessa. "Both of you, in my office. Now." They filed out, looking terrified. Patricia asked me to wait, offering me the best table in the house, not that it mattered at this point, and promised to return shortly. I sat alone, nursing a glass of water, thinking about what had just happened. This wasn't just about one bad experience at one restaurant. This was about something much bigger, the way society judges people based on their appearance, the way we make assumptions about worth based on clothing and accessories. I thought about all the times in my life when I'd been underestimated because I didn't fit someone's image of success. When I was starting out in business in my 20s, male investors wouldn't take me seriously. In my 40s, people assumed I was past my prime. And now, in my 60s, wearing comfortable clothes instead of power suits, I was treated like I didn't belong in nice places. 15 minutes later, Patricia emerged with Andre and Tessa behind her. Both of them looked chastened. "Eleanor," Patricia began, "I've had a long conversation with my staff about what happened today. They understand the severity of their actions and want to apologize." Andre stepped forward, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Ms. Williams, I owe you a sincere apology. My behavior was unprofessional, discriminatory, and completely unacceptable. There's no excuse for how I treated you." Tessa nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong to lie about the reservation and wrong to judge you. I understand if you can't forgive me." I looked at them both, these young people who had been so quick to dismiss me. "Do you understand why what you did was wrong? Not just because I turned out to be someone important, but because it would have been wrong regardless of who I was?" "Yes," Andre said quietly. "Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their appearance or perceived wealth." "Everyone deserves dignity," Tessa added. "That's right," I said. "What if I had actually been someone struggling, someone who had saved up for months to afford one nice meal? What if I had been celebrating something important or trying to feel human after a difficult time? Your judgment and cruelty would have crushed that person." They both looked genuinely ashamed now, and I felt some of my anger dissipate. They were young. They could learn. Patricia spoke up. "I'm implementing a new training program for all staff, focused on treating every customer with equal respect and dignity. And Andre and Tessa will be reassigned to different positions while they complete this training." "What kind of positions?" I asked. "The kitchen, specifically washing dishes and food prep." Andre and Tessa both looked shocked. "The kitchen?" Andre repeated. "But Ms. Monroe, we're your best front-of-house staff. We're highly sought after." "You were highly sought after because you knew how to charm wealthy customers," Patricia cut him off. "But you failed at the most basic requirement of hospitality, treating all human beings with respect. Until you learn that lesson, you'll work in the back." I watched Andre and Tessa process this new reality. Their carefully constructed image of themselves as elite service professionals was crumbling, and they were being forced to confront the ugliness of their own prejudices. "How long will we be in the kitchen?" Tessa asked quietly. "As long as it takes," Patricia said firmly. "Until I'm convinced you've learned what real service means. Until you understand that the dishwasher deserves the same courtesy as the CEO." They nodded and retreated, leaving Patricia and me alone. "I hope that was appropriate," Patricia said, sitting down across from me. "I won't tolerate that kind of behavior in any establishment I run." "It was more than appropriate," I assured her. "But Patricia, can I ask you something? How did this happen? You seem to understand the importance of treating people well, but your staff clearly operates under different values." She sighed deeply. "I think I've been so focused on making this place successful, on attracting high-end clientele, that I may have inadvertently created a culture where appearance matters more than character. I hired staff who could perform elegance, but I didn't emphasize enough that true elegance comes from how you treat others. That's an honest answer, I said. Can I tell you why I wanted to partner with you? Patricia asked. It's not just your track record with restaurants. It's something I read in an article about you years ago. You said that the restaurant industry isn't really about food. It's about making people feel valued and cared for. That stuck with me. I remembered that article. It had been written after I'd turned around a struggling diner in Detroit. I did say that, and I still believe it. Then please, Patricia said, help me make this place live up to that standard. I know today was awful, but I promise you, we can be better. I sat back, considering. Everything in me wanted to walk away from this deal. But I thought about Patricia's genuine remorse, about Andre and Tessa's shame, about the opportunity to create real change. All right, I said finally, but I have conditions. Anything. First, every employee, from the head chef to the dishwashers, goes through empathy training. Real training, not just a lecture. I want them to understand what it feels like to be judged, to be dismissed, to be treated as less than. Done. Second, we implement a policy where once a month, management works the kitchen while kitchen staff works the dining room. Everyone needs to understand every job in this restaurant. I love that idea. Third, we reserve 2 tables every evening for community members, people who might not otherwise be able to afford to eat here. Homeless individuals, struggling families, whoever needs a good meal and a moment of dignity. Patricia's eyes lit up. Eleanor, that's brilliant. It would completely change the culture here. That's the idea, I said. Because here's what I've learned in my years of business. You can have the fanciest decor, the most expensive ingredients, the most talented chef. But if your staff looks at customers and sees wallets instead of human beings, you've already failed. We spent the next hour discussing the partnership, but the conversation kept coming back to values. Patricia told me about her vision for expanding the restaurant chain, but now with a different focus, not just on luxury, but on genuine hospitality. Can I tell you something? I asked as our conversation was winding down. Of course. 6 years ago, I was exactly where you are now. I owned a restaurant that was on the verge of bankruptcy. I was stressed, desperate, cutting corners everywhere I could. Patricia looked surprised. I didn't know that. One day, a homeless woman came into my restaurant. My staff wanted to throw her out, said she'd drive away customers, that she was dirty and didn't belong. I paused, remembering that day so clearly. But something made me stop them. Maybe it was because I felt like I was one bad month away from being in her position. I invited her in, gave her a hot meal, offered her a job doing odd tasks around the restaurant. What happened? Patricia asked. She worked for me for 3 months. During that time, she taught me more about dignity and grace than any business school ever could. Then one day, she told me she'd found a place in a shelter program and would be moving on. Before she left, she gave me something. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small, worn coin. She said it was a seed. That kindness planted would grow into something bigger than I could imagine. I held the coin up to the light. Within a year, my restaurant was thriving, not because of any business strategy I'd implemented, but because I'd started treating every customer, every human being who walked through my door, with the same respect I'd shown that homeless woman. Patricia reached out and gently touched the coin. That's beautiful, Eleanor. The point is, I continued, what happened to me today wasn't just about me being humiliated. It was an opportunity to teach your staff, to change your restaurant's culture, to remember why we're really in this business. To feed people's souls, not just their stomachs, Patricia said softly. Exactly. We signed the partnership papers that afternoon, right there at that table in Rose Bistro. But it felt like more than a business deal. It felt like a commitment to building something better. 3 months have passed since that humiliating day at Rose Bistro. The restaurant has been transformed, and not just physically, though the new open kitchen design does help break down barriers between staff and customers. Andre and Tessa completed their time in the kitchen. I watched them change during those weeks, saw the arrogance melt away as they scrubbed pots alongside people they'd previously looked down on. They learned the names of the kitchen staff, heard their stories, understood their struggles. When they returned to the dining room, they were different people. Last week, I watched Andre greet a poorly dressed elderly man with the same warmth he'd reserved for a celebrity. Tessa spent 20 minutes helping a confused customer who couldn't read the menu well, never once showing impatience. The community dinner program has been our greatest success. Every evening we serve 2 tables of guests who might not otherwise afford to eat here. I've seen homeless veterans sit beside tech executives, single mothers celebrating birthdays at tables next to wealthy couples. And the magic is, you can't tell who paid and who didn't, because everyone is treated exactly the same. The other day, a woman came in wearing clothes that had clearly seen better days. I watched from across the room as Andre greeted her, and I saw him hesitate for just a moment, old habits dying hard. But then he smiled, a real smile, and said, "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to Rose Bistro. Let me show you to our best available table." After she was seated, he came to me, his eyes a little wet. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Thank you for not giving up on us. I've thought a lot about that homeless woman who gave me the coin all those years ago. How a single act of kindness rippled outward, changing not just my life, but the lives of everyone who works at my restaurants. Everyone who eats there, everyone who feels seen and valued instead of judged and dismissed. Patricia and I are opening our 2nd location next month, with the same values at its core. We're training a new staff, but this time from the ground up, with empathy and respect as the foundation. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd walked away that day, if I'd let my anger and humiliation win. How many people would have continued to be hurt by that culture of judgment? How many Andres and Tessas would have continued through life never learning to see the humanity in others? The truth is, that terrible day was a gift. Not in spite of the humiliation, but because of it. It showed me, and everyone at Rose Bistro, that real elegance isn't about expensive wine or designer clothes. It's about treating every soul who walks through your door as if they matter, because they do. I still carry that coin with me everywhere. It reminds me that we're all just one bad day, one wrong turn, one piece of bad luck away from being on the other side of judgment. And it reminds me that kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest foundation you can build on. My business is thriving now, but that's not what I'm most proud of. I'm proud that at my restaurants, a person can walk in wearing anything, looking like anything, and know they'll be treated with dignity. Because in the end, that's what we're all really hungry for. Not just good food, but the simple recognition that we're human, and we matter. If you enjoyed this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part impressed you. There's more tomorrow. See you there.